Hello, I'm Steph. I'm going to teach you today how to make a plaited mesh tube bracelet. What I've got here is some grey 4mm mesh tubing. It's quite versatile, you can do all sorts with it. I'm going to attempt to do something a little bit different, and to do that I am going to finish off the ends of 3 pieces of tube and actually glue them inside a rhodium plated barrel clasp, which is 9mm. So this is the barrel clasp. So all 3 ends should fit quite nicely inside the end there. To do this, I thought there's going to be a couple of things that I'm going to find really tricky, because I'm going to be filling the tubing with seed beads for this project. Obviously I want to be able to fill them and plait them, so I don't want all my beads to fall out. So I've come up with a few little tricks which hopefully will work quite nicely. So first things first, I'm going to actually stitch some 4mm beads inside the ends of my tubing. So I've just got a scrap piece of thread here and a beading needle, and I'm going to hold on to my tubing. I'm going to pop my bead in the end here, so you can see it's just sat just below the top there, and then with my scrap bit of thread I'm going to go in through the tubing, through the hole in the bead and out the other side. And you don't have to be an expert in sewing or anything to do this. So now my bead is suspended and held by that piece of thread inside there. I'm just going to go through again so it doesn't fall out and move around too much. So that's just a loop round, and that's just going to hold that bead in place. And now I'm going to add a second bead to the second length of tubing, and do exactly the same again with the long end of my thread. So into the tubing. Now, is the bead going to behave? Probably not. There we go, so into the tubing, through the bead and out the other side. And now that will sit next to my first piece of tubing, and I'm just going to go through that bead again just to stop it from moving around. Pull that thread. Now I've got 2 pieces of cording there next to each other, and then I'm going to do the same again for the third piece. Now I'm just going to tie my 2 ends of thread together just to stop everything moving around quite so much. That's just a double knot. And now I've got, you can see there, the 3 are held together quite nicely, and they've just got the beads inside there. So that's going to stop everything from collapsing. I'm just going to trim off that excess thread. All this will get hidden inside the barrel end, so it really doesn't matter too much. There we go. Get rid of the excess thread, and now when I come to gluing this in here, I can shove those really far in, and that will work quite nicely. I can trim off any excess bits that are sticking out. I'm going to use epoxy resin glue for this. So that's a 2-part glue that you mix together, and when it's set, it sets solid like plastic. So I'm just going to mix my glue up on a scrap piece of plastic bag. I would ordinarily not mix any glue anywhere near a beading mat ever, because beading mats and glue do not mix well together. But for the purpose of the video, it is easier not to have to move everything. So the glue comes as 1 part hardener and 1 part resin, and when the 2 mix together, that's when the curing process starts. So mix equal measures, and then just mix the 2 parts together. So now I'm going to coat the end of my tubing in the glue. I'm going to put a reasonable amount on because I don't want it to move around inside, and because the glue is like a gel consistency, it's quite easy to put quite a bit on. and it should fill all the gaps in the side of the barrel. So I'm going to slide the barrel on over all of the ends. I'm actually going to put a little bit more inside the barrel because then that'll help fill any empty bits as well. If you get any bits of glue on the outside of the barrel, you can always peel them off afterwards, though it is recommended not to get it on your hands like I've just done. There we go. Now that feels quite secure inside there, so I'm now going to leave that to dry. It will be workable in sort of 5 to 10 minutes, but it'll take a full 24 hours to cure completely, but we'll be able to work with that again shortly. So now my 3 lengths of tubing are attached in. I've left that for about 10 minutes or so it goes off, and I can carry on with my bracelet. So what I'm going to be doing to fill the tubes is using size 8 silver lined seed beads, because they've got a little bit of a sparkle, and I thought that might make a nice nice combination together. So I've gone for clear silver lined, aqua silver lined and blue silver lined. Nice summery colours. I need to fill each strand to a similar sort of length before I can do any of the plaiting or braiding, and because I need the bracelet to have a finished length of about 15-16 centimetres, I'm actually going to go for 20 centimetres of filled tubing, so that when I actually braid it, it will take up some of the length, and I hope you won't run out of space at the end. Because the beads come like this and I need to fill them into these tubes, I decided to come up with a clever way of creating a paper funnel, just out of just a normal piece of paper, rolled up the bottom bit and then stuck a more funnel shaped bit at the top, and just taped together. Very easy to do, and then that will fit inside the top of my tube like so. I'll just hold that in place as I pour beads in. So I'll start first of all with the clear ones. So holding that there. Hopefully this will work. I'm just going to pour a few in to begin with. I need a bit of a shake, but they are going down. So this bit's taking a little bit of a while, but I've just got them slowly trickling down into the tube, so you can see them starting to build up there. So I will get this all done and then we can move on. Okay, so I've filled all the tubes now, so they've all got size 8 seed beads in, to approximately 22-23 centimetres worth is full. I thought it's better to be safe than sorry, and I've added a bit extra in. So I've just finished off the ends by flattening the tubing and adding a bead stopper on. That way, as you braid, if they end up at slightly different lengths at the end, you can just take a few beads out if needs be to make them all the same size. So now I can start the braiding. So I'm just going to do a really traditional braid or plait, where you take the outside edge into the middle and then swap, so it's always one from the side into the centre. I'm not making the braid really tight because then that might make the bracelet a little bit too bulky, and then just swapping them over so you can see there the pattern's starting to build up. So nice loose braid works very well here. And you can see there, that works really nicely, and as a bracelet that's going to look brilliant. Okay, so as I suspected, not all my strands are the same length at the end here, so these two are pretty much the same length. I just need to take a few out of this slightly paler blue colour, and I can release all the clamps now as well. So just to make these the same length, I'll just take a few of those blue ones out. So they're all finishing at roughly the same size there. Now I'm going to do the same as I did at the beginning, where I sewed a bead into the end of each tube. I'm also just going to check that's a good size bracelet. So with my bit of thread I had earlier, and because I don't want to have to feed my 4mm beads down the 4mm tube all the way down there to stitch them in, I'm just going to trim it off here, and I'm going to do exactly the same. So pop the bead into the end and stitch around, and then attack glue on the end. So I've just trimmed down the edges of the tubing so I can stitch the stopper beads in place. So exactly the same process as the beginning of the bracelet. So I'm going to drop a bead down inside. I really want this to now sit on top of the seed beads. So I'll just pop that down into the right position and then sew through. And again, I'm just going to loop that through once. So that one's now held in place. I'm just keeping hold of all three ends, so I don't want to put them down and then the beads to spill out, because that will make life a lot more difficult. Okay, so now all three are stitched across, and I'm going to tie the two ends together again. So we get a tube shape for putting into the barrel shaped end. Okay, so now my braid can't come undone. It's all together now. So trim off those excess bits of thread. And now we can trim the ends down, ready to pop the barrel end onto the last part of the bracelet. And then this again requires mixing up more glue. That should be short enough now to fit in the end. Okay, so this end's now glued in, so we just need to wait for that to dry and we'll have a finished bracelet. There'll be a full list of what I've used for this bracelet underneath the video, and do make sure to subscribe so that you get to see all of our new videos.